This is the first in our videos about our Greece unit. All right, and the idea behind our Greece unit is, Greece has often been referred to as the cradle or the birth of Western civilization. We can trace a lot of the ideas of the West back to the Greek mainland. Now, it's worth understanding where it is we're talking about. So, this would be the modern nation of Greece. Now, Greece as we know it, we can see here, it's bordered by the Aegean Sea to the east, the Ionian Sea to kind of the southwest, and the Sea of Crete to the south, with the larger Mediterranean Sea at the very southern border. Now, Greece currently has a population as of about 2018. There's 11 million, and there's a little over 3 million living in the capital city of Athens. You can see Athens right there on the map. Now, 80% of the Greek mainland is mountainous, and the sea, given that it's surrounded by water, the sea has always held a special place for the Greeks. As we look at this map, we can see not only Athens, but we have Sparta, Corinth. These are some of the more vital city-states that we'll take a look at. Even the island of Crete, just south of the Sea of Crete, will hold a special place in Greek history. Now, for our purposes, when we look at the influences on what we come to know as Greece, Greece as we know it began circa meaning around 1720 BC on that island of Crete. Now, the name Crete was actually given by later Greeks. It's not what they referred to themselves as, but it was kind of one of those things where, after the fact, that's what we called it. Now, this was what we would call the Bronze Age, when bronze was the primary metal that was used for weapons and general metallurgy. Now, according to Greek mythology, and right off the bat, this is something that we're going to be coming back to. Mythology was incredibly important to the Greeks, as was their religion. According to Greek mythology, King Minos, a man named King Minos, wanted to prove that he was divinely chosen, meaning favored by the gods, to lead his people. So he asked the sea god, Poseidon, to send a bull to him for sacrifice. A bull then walked out of the sea, and it was so magnificent that Minos refused to sacrifice it, and he simply added it to his flock, and he just sacrificed another one instead. Poseidon was furious. He was so upset with this act that he cursed the wife of Minos to adore the bull and lust after the bull. And the result of this is what we call the Minotaur, half man, half bull, and he was placed in a labyrinth or a maze underneath the mighty palace of Knossos. After defeating a mainland Greek force in battle, so Minos and his army defeated a mainland Greek force, Minos demanded that they send 7 boys and 7 girls every year, and they'd be used to feed the Minotaur. This is where the eventual myth of Theseus slaying the Minotaur develops. Was there a Minos? Not sure. That's where the myth is. Was there a palace and a main city called Knossos? Yes, there absolutely was. So within this mythology, we can take some elements of truth. Now, the idea of an ongoing exchange between the island of Crete and the mainland reflects the reality of consistent trade. All right, trade was something that definitely occurred big time. Piracy was a problem around Crete until the Minoans, stamped it out with their navy. And the elimination of the threat of pirates allows the Minoans to concentrate on not only acquiring wealth and focus on creating what we call frescoes, but also more elaborate buildings and other creative projects to please the gods. So this would be a recreation of what we think their mighty palace looked like. And we can see archaeology from this palace still exists today. The Minoans, you're thinking to yourself, what's that? You guessed it, they had indoor plumbing. There was indoor plumbing on the island of Crete. So once they took care of safety, they could focus on more creative endeavors. Now we do know that they wrote in a script that we call Linear A, and we still haven't been able to decipher it. All right, we haven't been able to figure out exactly what it means. But we know there weren't any walls surrounding the island or the palace, so safety wasn't a huge concern. They vanished. We got no clue exactly what happened to them, but the common thoughts are either a volcano erupted, maybe a tidal wave wiped the islands out. And this is where we think that perhaps the myth of the lost civilization of Atlantis came from, where when Plato wrote of Atlantis, he writes that it was a mighty civilization that was swallowed up by the sea. So a tidal wave that wiped out the most advanced civilization that they knew would make sense. Now the next in line for influencing what we know of as the Greeks were the Mycenaeans, who had cities on the Greek mainland. So we've moved from Crete to the Greek mainland. Now it is from these towns that we receive that myth of Theseus, because he was actually from one of these towns. There is evidence of direct trade with the Minoan civilization. All right, so the fact that the Minoans were a sea people, they would have traded with these individuals. But much of what we think we know about them comes from the epics that are attributed to Homer. All right, the epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Mycenaeans were also the ones who sent the most ships, 100 of them, to attack Troy. But the stories were written down allegedly by a blind poet named Homer, and we have no clue if he was real or not. By the time the stories were written, the town of Troy was just a hollow shell of what it once was. Now this age was spoken of as an age of warrior kings who ruled over cities fortified by massive walls. And sometimes this was called the Age of Heroes, because men like Achilles and Hector were seen as godlike or favored by the gods themselves. Now in reality, the Mycenaeans did maybe have some of these features, and they did, to an extent, build on Minoan achievement. The Mycenaeans wrote in a script called Linear B. Linear B. So it's related to Linear A, but it definitely has differences. And Linear B was formally deciphered in the 1950s. Now, ultimately, something happened. Just like how we don't know about the Minoans, we know that with the Mycenaeans, something happened where the cities were either burned to the ground or sacked, and the new settlers who came from the European mainland had no type of writing. Since they didn't have any type of writing, the decline of the Mycenaeans is sometimes thought to usher in what's called the Greek Dark Age.